Welcome again to Workshop Wednesday. I'm Chelsea Bussemeyer and I'm so excited to have you here and to chat about plus sizes, petite sizes, grading, fit, how that all hangs together and how you can get a good understanding of fit for your own body by kind of understanding what these pieces look like. So as I mentioned, unfortunately, it looks like the email never got sent out. So we're just a very small group here today in the Zoom room. So we'll have to follow up with everyone right away after we're finished here. But let's dive right in to the content and get started. I wanted to start today by just talking about the definition of grading. So the definition of grading is, it's just literally the process of turning a base size or a sample size, whatever that size may be, into an additional range of sizes or sizing nest, it's sometimes called. And that's just using specific measurements or increments to change the size in up or down. And the reason you need those specific increments is that it's important to understand that you can't just change the size of a pattern by simply, pressing that grow 20% or shrink 20% on your printer, and it just, comes out smaller or larger, as the way a human's proportions aren't evenly enlarged or decreased based on our size. And that's really what I want to talk about today, is proportions. So let's look at a pattern size, a nest of sizes, and get an idea from that what it really means to have a pattern nest and what it looks like. So I'm sure you've all seen one if you've ever worked with a pattern before. So here, just going to lay this down on my table and quickly switch our view to the camera down. Okay, so here we go. This is a really classic pattern, right? So this is a top piece. This is actually the back of a top. And we can see here the different lines of the different sizes, but you'll notice, especially here under the arm, there's no difference in the depth of the armhole. And here on the shoulder does grow in length, in how tall the strap or shoulder piece is, but it's not the same amount as we have the enlargement here, which is making the shoulder wider or broader for the size. And same with the neck. The actual neck point is, the width of the neckline is not really changing at all. A very, very, very slight amount. It's going out as it's getting larger, but it's growing also in length. The depth of the neckline here in the back isn't changing, but to match the shoulder, the center middle here is changing the same increments that we have on the shoulders. So this is simply a pattern nest. And just looking at the different increments at different places will show you just what they mean by the necessity to have those grading guides and to know which point on the pattern where do you need to add and subtract which amount. So the thing about these grading guides or these grading amounts is that they can seem kind of confusing, as especially if you don't have one of those charts. There's different types of charts that you can get with the grades at the specific points and where to place them. It can really seem overwhelming. However, when we're talking about fit for ourselves, looking at fit from a different perspective, we're really just wanting to learn how we can expand patterns and decrease patterns to fit our body proportions. And proportions is what I really want to dive into and drive home today, is understanding how the proportions work, because that will shed a lot of light on not only how grading works and the different grading points and how they vary, but will also help you get an understanding how you can easily fit your patterns to your body. So, proportional fit. Proportional fit. This is really the way to win and achieve the perfect fit when sewing. So whether you're a petite size, whether you're a plus size, whether you're really tall and slender, or busty, no bust, it all comes down to the proportional fit, which is why when I teach fit, and especially the foundation of fit in my fitting fashion program, I break it down into 3 areas. The 3 pillars of fit is what I call them. And there we have the twisting my tongue today. Proportional fit is one of them, but the pillar that we most often think about when we think about fit is the physical fit. And while that is very important in sewing as well as in fit and understanding fit, physical fit is really just having the right mass of material, right? Does the circumference measurement of our body fit in the circumference of the finished garment? And oftentimes we want to have that little bit of ease, extra circumference, because our garments sit on the outside of our bodies. So that would be your physical fit. When we're talking about proportional fit, it's more about when you have the right amount of fullness in the right spot. And I'm going to do a little demonstration both in a plus size as well as in a petite pattern piece, so you can get an idea of how that works. Now, the third pillar of fit I call is personal preference in fit and style, as everyone is unique in how they like to wear their clothes, and that is a personal preference, but nonetheless important so that your garments fit you properly. So the style elements, not only your personal preference, but in the fit, you have a personal preference in the style elements, which would be like, how long are your tops? Where does your neckline sit? Different things like that, as well as style elements can also flatter your body, having the waist sit at the right spot on you, or if this waist is sitting at the wrong spot, it can also cause kind of an optical illusion, so that the fit will seem off, even though like the physical fit, the garment fits in a circumference wise or around your body. So let's look at a little example here with a plus size piece, or understanding how the difference in the plus size measurement would be. My camera just needs to quickly adjust here again, and we'll take a look. So I have a little mannequin here. We have a body and just the side profile of just a strapless top. I wanted to use this strapless top here just for one, because I know this is a huge problem when it comes to plus size wedding gowns, and I get to see and work with plus size wedding gowns all the time. And here it's also a very kind of clean example of what I mean by proportional fit. So when we're looking at the proportional fit of this particular body, we can see that the mannequin really carries quite a bit of weight in the tummy area. Now, when you're talking about an average size compared to a plus size, if the person carries their weight kind of in the tummy area, the fit will be off as well, but it won't torque the garment as much as it most likely will in a plus size. And this is the thing that plus size and petite people really understand that the rest of us need to get, is that there's more to fit than just the physical circumference measurement of the body. It's matching up the finished garments to the actual shape and proportions of the garment. So when we're talking about this example here with this plus size mannequin, if her circumference measurement around her waist matches this dress, but most of the weight is carried in the stomach area, this is what's going to happen when you simply just make the garment without adjusting it. And here it will look like it doesn't fit in the waist, just because the stomach is kind of sticking out when I place the garment on the mannequin. But we're just going to assume that that circumference would fit her, but it's on the side and not in the stomach. So what's going to happen when she puts this piece on is that it's going to bump onto her tummy. And even though the cup would fit, the cup won't be able to slide back and sit on her body the way it needs to, because there's proportions of the stomach area are not lining up with the proportions of the top. If we slide the piece on so that it fits the bust area perfectly, we can see that it does not have the room that it needs or the shape that it needs under the bust. So it won't be able to fit to this person, and it will really torque and contort the garment and will cause all sorts of problems. As I mentioned, it will sit here on the stomach, and then it will seem like it gapes, but it won't do up. And then if you would pull it tight, the side seam would torque to the front, because she would need the extra room there, and it would just be a lot of frustration. So this is what really needs to be adjusted on the pattern, is not only that the finished garment measurements will fit in a circumference, but that the proportions of the garment will fit, so that it will really have that effect, like it fits like a glove, like we sometimes say with the measurements. So let's quickly take a look at a sleeve. Now this, I pulled this pattern out here for especially for Linda, as Linda is petite and she's wondering how you would make a sleeve, a two-piece sleeve petite. So whether it's a two-piece or regular sleeve, it's pretty much the same scenario, but with the two-piece sleeve, you'd want to start with the larger piece, the piece that connects to the shoulder point. So Linda, your first step would be really just to check the length of your arm. So from your shoulder point where your sleeve is going to attach to where you want your hem to be. And measuring your arm down to your hem is, I'll just quickly switch the camera view. So that's a pretty easy measurement, although it's sometimes a little tricky to do on yourself, because you'll want to measure just from your shoulder point down, up, gotta go this way, down to your wrist. Now, you'll always want to measure though with your arm down, so that you have the full length when you're relaxed and standing in your garment, as that is the length you want to actually cut the piece. As we all know, when we reach, sometimes because we need a little bit more length across the back, your sleeve will kind of shorten. And of course, when we go up just straight out the side, then the sleeve will kind of grow and get longer. So we want our sleeve to be the right length when we're standing straight. So that's the measurement you're going to want to take. So you might want to get someone else to kind of look and see what is the actual measurement down at your wrist. So once you have your actual arm measurement, your proportion, the proportion of your arm length, then you can go back to your pattern and measure the length from the shoulder point down to your hem. So regardless of what the measurement actually is on this pattern, we'll just assume that I'm going to take a real big chunk out of this sleeve just so that it's more obvious to the visual here we're providing with these pattern pieces. So I'm going to just say, you know, I want to take out an extra 4 inches of length in the sleeve. So if we just hack the sleeve and took out 4 inches, what's going to happen with our sleeve is that we're going to have a little offset kind of edge. So the main thing that we're thinking about in proportions with a petite sleeve is that it just needs to be shorter, but we need all the areas of the body to be accounted for. We need the length of the arm, we need the circumference of the wrist, we need to know that it's going to fit around our elbow and the circumference measurement of the elbow and not be too tight, as well as the circumference measurement of our bicep. So if I just simply took this line and blended it out to the point here to keep the shoulder curve the same, because we don't need to adjust the shoulder at all. I'm just gonna mute quick here. And then I thought I was spotlighted. Let's just spotlight this again so that you guys can feel free to ask questions if you have a question. Yeah, so we're only needing to shorten up the length, but we don't need to adjust the shoulder seam in a petite, but we do need to account for the circumference measurements of the rest of our arm so that it doesn't get too tight. So we would need to either just start by taking our circumference measurements of the bicep and the elbow, or if we knew we wanted a loose fitting sleeve, we could just start with this, the end of this line, and blend it out by the wrist, their circumference that we need there. Or if we knew we needed to kind of fit the sleeve the way we wanted it in the fullness of the sleeve, then that is when we would take our body's measurements and just measure the pattern, cross-reference the pattern at the elbow, and you can measure again from your shoulder point down to where your bicep measurement circumference was, and measure across here to cross-reference, and from the shoulder point down to the elbow and cross-reference their proportions here so that you would know exactly where you needed and your sleeve to be and how much fullness you needed along this line. Now, taking this measurement and knowing that we need to subtract the 2 inches or the 4 inches, I said 4 inches here along this whole length will help us understand the amount that we need to subtract from this second part of the sleeve. If it was a 1-piece sleeve, then you'd have it all in the one adjustment, but with the 2-piece sleeve, you need to make the adjustment twice. And so what we need to do with this second piece, since this would be a little bit trickier to know how to measure because it would depend on how deep of an armhole we had on our garment, where we needed to start the measurement under our arm to measure length, we can go off of the length from the measurement from the shoulder point to the wrist here and automatically just also subtract 4 inches from this piece. Now, once we subtract those 4 inches, we have the same scenario that we had on the first piece, that we have an adjustment to make here. So this is where you always need to measure both pieces when you're talking about the circumference of both your bicep and your elbow. So both of these pieces would need to be adjoined, or will be adjoined in the finished garment. So the width of both pieces need to be accounted for when we are measuring the fullness for our sleeve, and to know how we want to smooth out the line here. So the easiest way to do that is to always just mark in your stitch lines. Now this pattern has the stitch lines already in there, and I can see what the seam allowance is just by looking at the pattern, but most of the time your pattern will only have the cut line and not the actual stitch line. So mark in those stitch lines, and as I mentioned before, you can measure down the depth from the shoulder point to where that bicep and elbow would be, and just measure from the stitch line to the stitch line, and then again from the stitch line to the stitch line. And of course, I like to just do it with the measuring tape and then have my full circumference, but you can also write those measurements down and add them together on a paper afterwards, but it's quite easy to just take your measuring tape, lay it on the stitch line, mark it with your finger, move it to the next pattern piece, lay it on the stitch line, and continue that way to know your full circumference measurement of the finished garment of this pattern piece, and get an idea of how that will fit your arm and how you need to blend out the sleeve accordingly. So the last thing you're going to want to do whenever you make an adjustment to any pattern is to check that the adjoining lines also line up. So this pattern would be adjoining on itself, and you can either do it with a measuring tape or line up your stitch lines and just follow them along and see if your pattern piece does line up or if there's extra length on one piece. And of course, since this is a two-piece sleeve, there are 2 seams on the sleeve, so you'll want to check that one as well. The way I just have quickly folded this shows you here how this piece is a little bit longer. Now, one thing to keep in mind is sometime on 2-piece sleeves, this seam, the outside kind of elbow, this is the back of the arm, as this is the top of the arm coming from your shoulder. This sleeve seam here, this piece on the larger piece, this will be slightly longer than this one. So measure your original pattern to know if they have included extra length in there. And the simple reason why, you just go from, again, stitch line along there to measure it, and the stitch line of the original. The reason that they would add extra length in this piece of the pattern and not in this one is that it will round your sleeve a little bit and give you more room for your elbow. So easing the material together in this area right across the elbow can be a nice way to get a little bit more shape into your sleeve. Which is the reason why you do have the 2-piece sleeve, is that you want to create a sleeve with more shape to it than just a straight arm. Now, I thought that the example, Carol sent in a question. She's wondering how it works for her because she has very narrow shoulders, but more of an apple-shaped torso. So apple shape is just more square. She doesn't have as much deviation or variation along along just the side of her torso when you're just looking at the silhouette view of the shape of her torso. But she does have very small shoulders. So what are the kind of things that would need to be adjusted on her patterns? Would be one, she definitely would need to think about kind of bringing the shoulders in just at the very top of the pattern. We touched on that last week, I believe it was, and talked about the shoulder seam and how you can adjust and pivot your pattern in if you need to bring those shoulders in and make more narrow shoulders. Now, the next thing she would need to remember to do is adjust the side seam, in that maybe she would need to create more of a straight line on the side of her pattern going off the rib cage to the hips, and wouldn't need to deviate as much into the waist if it would be a little bit tight on her waist that way. Same with the hips. Depending on her proportions, again, she might need to either flatten out those hips or just create more of a straight line going off the bust measurement, as that's a wider measurement, again, straight down to the hips if she needs the fullness of the hips in the finished garment measurement. So I know some of you are ready. You're ready to get kind of get out of the frustration and the overwhelm and get to a place of confidence and easily identifying each pattern's adjustments that needs to be made for your body, and you want to know how you can best adjust each pattern when you start a new sewing project. And I know that if that's really where you're at, you would love my Fitting Fashion program. So I'm going to just place a link real quick here in the chat where you can book an appointment with me and chat about this opportunity and how it would really fit your needs. So I had to add that pun in there, but no, seriously, when sewing is part of who you are and you love it and it's part of your heart and your soul, I always say that sewing is something that you're born with. And if that's true for you, then it's not something that you're going to be giving up or stopping anytime soon. And so it only makes sense to get to a place of enjoyment and success with your projects sooner rather than later, and really getting to utilize and enjoy those projects and garments that you make. So if you're tired of puzzling your way through each project and you just want to get that foundation built and to really understand the 3 pillars of fit and learn some new techniques along the way, then definitely click on the link. It should also be on the Facebook Live. So in the post there should be a link, and snag an appointment as they are limited. So you won't want to miss out there. And as always, remember that if you do ever miss a Workshop Wednesday and you want to go back and watch it, you can either do it in the Sew with Chelsea Facebook group. So find me there, or you can watch it on YouTube. And it's just on my channel, Chelsea Bussenmeyer, and then there's a whole Workshop Wednesday playlist that has all of the Workshop Wednesday classes on there. Okay, that brings us to the end of today's lesson, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. And don't forget to send me an email if there is a topic that you would like me to cover in a Workshop Wednesday class. Okay, I hope you all have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye now.